Good evening, YouTube. My name is Yusuf, and you are watching my news channel on this Tuesday, the 15th of June 2021. So, in my previous video, I already showed this Coronal Hole and said that solar wind could possibly reach us in the following days. And as it so happens, it did just that. Today at around 12 UTC, as you can see here, we can clearly see an impact which shows on all the metrics. So prior to the impact, we could see a buildup in proton density. This is normal. This is basically the solar wind sweeping all the plasma in front of it. And then when we see the drop, this is when the temperature in purple starts to rise. This is actually the initial start of the impact, which will last 2 days or so, because solar wind tends from a Coronal Hole tend to last longer than CMEs, etc. So, looking at the KP index, we see it already starting to rise steadily, and this will continue. In fact, NOAA predicts, if I go to the home page, and I'm not mistaken, for tomorrow, yes, for the 16th and the 17th, a G1 storm. For those of you not familiar with geomagnetic storm, I will leave a link of this. These are the NOAA space weather scales, so you can actually see and read for yourself what a G1 geomagnetic storm implies in terms of effect. So I'm going to read a little bit. Power systems, for example, weak power grid fluctuations can occur. Spacecraft operations, minor impact on satellites are possible, and other system migratory animals are affected or otherwise commonly visible at high latitudes, and that will be it. And each geomagnetic storm has its own effects, so depending on the scale. You can also download this in a PDF format, as you can see. And here you have actually the 3 scales all together in one page: the geomagnetic storms, the solar radiation storms, and the radio blackouts scales. But for this particular event, you just need this one, the geomagnetic storm scales. So no worries, I will leave a link in the description box of these scales. So what does a KP5 implies for tomorrow? Well, basically increased auroral activity, increased seismicity, but also it influences weather systems and even volcanoes. So it is important for tomorrow to monitor all these things. As you can see, when we look at the auroral forecast, it is already starting to increase. This will continue in the following days, but this is of course depending whether the BZ component, as you can see here in red, will go negative or not. So, oh yes, another thing that you should monitor, that is the induced ground currents, oftenly known as geoelectric field. If I play this, you can see actually it fluctuates, and this is important because basically what this means is that all these all these magnetic fields at ground level can induce a current in the lines and the cables that transport the electricity, and basically overload the transformators at the power facilities themselves. This can result in damage or even blackouts if it is actually severe. And this scale actually jumps each time by a factor of 10. So if it ever reaches purple or white, you will see lots of blackouts, and white basically means that we're going back to the Stone Age, because then all grids would fail. So very important tool to monitor. Oh yes, now let's switch about another thing briefly. I was actually looking at the CME tracker, and something actually got my attention, and I thought that this was actually a sun-diving comet. But I'm hesitating to think that because, as you can see, first of all, it doesn't have a tail. It's actually just a dot, and this is in itself very strange, especially when you look here. I mean, we can clearly see just one black dot and one white dot. So this means that this could be an asteroid and not a sun-diving comet. And another interesting fact is that at some point, you see, it disappears. It simply vanishes. So this thing did not dive into the sun. In this particular region, it just vanished. This leads me to believe that this was not a comet at all. And the only other explanation I could find for this is basically, yes, a very big asteroid. How else can we explain this, since it's not a comet? This happened on the 13th at 2 in the morning, I believe. If I go at 2 UTC, let me just go to the exact timestamp. Yes, it sort of appears at 2 UTC, at 2 in the morning, the 13th of June, and then disappears at around 5 UTC. So it appeared a few hours and then it disappeared. I thought I'd just show you this because, I don't know, this is kind of a mystery. So let's go back to that solar wind flowing from the Coronal Hole in question. So first of all, as usual, it jumps almost to geosynchronous orbit. So the magnetopause comes very close to geosynchronous orbit. Now we show this in an instant. But funny enough, just prior to this happening, there is like, let me just see, from 9 to 13 UTC. So now we are talking almost 3 hours that are just missing of data. So then I went through the simulation that actually shows the magnetic field lines. And over here we can clearly see, and this is what I've been showing for a long time in my videos. So for those not familiar with what's really happening, basically just prior to the magnetosphere collapsing to geosynchronous orbit, the closed field lines at the backside of the planet start expanding. They do so in a very violent fashion. Then all sorts of anomalies start to show up until a point where it actually completely collapses, so to speak. And you see in the next frame, so in the frame that actually starts from 3 hours later, we can see the end result. The end result is basically almost the current belt drains completely in the backside of our planet. As to why, I have read an article that says this is basically due to the fact that the magnetosphere comes too close. So when it compresses too much, there is what they called electron depletion, and it happens in the current belts. Interestingly enough, it happens at the backside, not per se at the front. As to why NASA would not allow us to see what's happening, well, if you look at my previous videos, this can create for a brief moment, usually just a couple of hours, very intense anomalies. Maybe this is the reason why we are not allowed to see this. But this will definitely come in the news, especially at solar maximum, because you can hide this forever. I mean, this happens just if solar wind from Coronal Hole is able to do this. Just imagine what X-flares accompanied by CMEs would do. So, looking at the earthquakes, there aren't that many, and of course we haven't reached a KP5 yet, but already we are seeing activity. And if I go to the, if I show actually all the magnitudes, something got my attention, and this looks like a cluster, actually two. There is one in Puerto Rico and one in the Dominican Republic, actually the coast of it, not per se on land. Yes, Dominican Republic at the coast of these islands. So both islands are showing actually quake swarms, and they are near a fault line. So maybe we could expect a big one over here, 5-pointer, 6-pointer, who knows. Other than that, there isn't really much to see activity-wise. If I switch to the 7 days, it becomes that much clearer. There is lots of activity over here. On the other side of the Ring of Fire, of course, because this side of the Ring of Fire is locked. So the San Andreas fault line is overdue to a big one. It will happen someday. Don't panic if you live in California. If you live near San Francisco, Los Angeles, just have an earthquake plan. Make sure you have transportation, communication, food supplies, water, generator, people to contact, an escape plan. Because when the big one happens, we are not talking about 6 or 7 magnitude. We are talking 8 or 9. This will be a truly devastating earthquake with lots of casualties. So, let's switch. Oh yes, by the way, if you haven't already done so, don't forget to subscribe to my channel, otherwise you will miss future content. And don't forget to turn on the notifications so you actually know or see at least when I post a video. And if you actually like this one, why not hit the like button? So, yes, before I end the video, let's take a look at the Gelding-Galadir volcano. This thing is supposed to be live. Let me just refresh that a little bit because it just keeps loading. Oh yes, it is actually. So, since we are going to reach a KP5 tomorrow, or maybe today at night, I thought I show this again. So there is an active volcano in Iceland, as you know. And I will leave a link because who knows, this one might become more active in the coming days. Okay, this is the end of the video, and I will cite the philosophical quote as usual. I think we are at 53. Oh yes. He who intends to be a great man ought to love neither himself nor his own things, but only what is just, whether it happens to be done by himself or by another. So basically, if your personal possession or your money or whatever comes in the way of what is just or not, you will never be a great man. Especially if you love yourself, if you have a big ego, this is something you need to work on, because only when you see the value, the greater value of people that have to be protected, or something you believe in, rather than material possessions, will you be an accomplished person. This is it, people. Thank you for watching my video. I will leave links down below of the NOAA scales and of the Gelding-Galadir volcano, although you have to be patient, it just keeps loading. And who knows, maybe we will reach a KP5 like NOAA predicts in the coming days, and if so, I will make another video to actually cover that geomagnetic storm. This is it. Hope you liked it, and I guess we see each other next time. Bye bye everyone, take care of yourselves.